We're gonna swim, bike, and run in the corner sun. We're gonna swim, bike, and run in the corner sun. 2021.
Thank you, Poncho Man. Welcome everybody to Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. My name is Bob Babbitt. We're brought to you by Challenge North America, Credo Tri, UCAN, Hoka One One, Velo Fix, Norma Tech, Canyon Bikes, and of course our Challenged Athletes Foundation. We just sent out 3,038 grants totaling $5.1 million to keep challenged athletes in the game of life through sport. Our next guest is the founder of CalTri and CalTri Events. Mr. Thom Richmond joins us. Tommy, how you doing?
Good morning here from the East Coast.
You're on the East Coast and you're putting on what, 4 events in 4 weeks? Are you a crazy man?
I know we have four races, 3 time zones at 22 days. So we start out next Sunday at Fort Worth, and then successive weeks in Austin, Lake Monticello in Virginia, and then finally the big race out at Lake Perris in California.
So the fact that people haven't been able to do events for a year and a half, you decided to come out hot. And I was like, okay, we're back in business. We're going to come out with a 4-play.
It's, as all 4 were going to market, we thought we might lose one. We thought
Sure.
that something might happen, but honestly, all 4 sets of municipalities are great. And we're ready to race. We have, in Fort Worth, we have an almost sold out event. In Austin, it is pretty much sold out. Lake Monticello in Virginia is a bigger event, and that's basically sold out. And then the Lake Perris event, which is out in outside Los Angeles, it's pretty close to being sold out as well. So across the board, we're people are really interested in getting back to working.
It's interesting because I think a lot of people were thinking, okay, people are going to be hesitant to come back and race again just because they're worried about COVID and what might the ramifications there. But you're not seeing that.
No, I don't. You know what you know, and you know what you don't know. So you don't know who's not signing up. But for our Lake Monticello event, we had 100 people. We gave them an option to defer to 2022, and 100 people took that option. So 500 are racing, but 100 have deferred. So that's a data point for everybody. 1 out of 6.
So let's talk a little bit about what I'm most excited about, because in my hometown area here, we got the CalTri Lake Perris Tri coming up on the 9th of May, which is near my 70th birthday. So I'm excited. I think it'll be my first race after I'm officially 70 years old. And there's a sprint, there's a sprint swim bike, you've got Olympic, you've got basically it's a whole salad bar. Talk a little bit about everything you got going on out there.
Yeah, so it's so in terms of events, we have 14 events. We have 7 events at each of the 2 distances, sprint and Olympic. So triathlon relay, run, bike, run, swim, run, swim, and run at both distances. And this race out at Lake Perris was actually my first race back in 2008, 2009. I don't remember when. I think it was 2008. And it used to be called Big Rock.
Yep, I raced it.
And it was a great race. It was hard for sure, especially as a beginner. But this will be the first year that we'll be able to circumnavigate the lake. Normally, you had to go do a lot of back and forths, but they built a ring road, and so we'll be able to circumnavigate. So we have a video online which has been downloaded quite a bit, and I think people are going to be excited about that location. It's 55 minutes from Irvine. It's 70 minutes from Los Angeles. It's 90 minutes from San Diego. And we're seeing all kinds of participation from Southern California.
Yeah, I love it. You're at 88 from LA, 76 from San Diego, 62 from Riverside, 59 from Orange, 42 from San Bernardino. It's a mixture, right? People all over Southern Cal are anxious to race. The other side of this is, and this is something you started, I think, with your the event up in Newport, was you're encouraging people to come and camp as well.
We are. I mean, camping's open there at Lake Perris. So I have an RV. I guess I'm glamping a little bit. Back in the day, we'd go up to Wildflower and take a large group of people, and and do that. And I'm 100 yards, we're 100 yards from the transition area. And so, if you're going to be out in the great outdoors, why not? So yeah, that park is open, and they have plenty of RV and camping spaces.
So I love when you got into this, you got into as an athlete, former rugby guy. In terms of creating the business model you're using now, where you've gone from, okay, we're going to start a club. Next thing you know, you're putting on events all over the country. Talk a little bit about the transition from, I was an athlete, I'm going to be involved in a club, and now we're going to put on events all over the country.
Yeah, it's we had a potential sponsor reach out to us a few weeks ago and maybe a month ago, and it took about 5 minutes for me to convince them not to join, not to jump into triathlon, just because of the headwinds that triathlon has experienced over the last 10 years. So as a business model, putting on short course triathlon series around the country isn't necessarily a smart business. I wouldn't encourage somebody to do that. But when your mission is, to have safe, affordable, and accessible racing around the country, we are in process of putting races near enough to the large cities and at a price point that allows a lot of people to participate. So next year, as an example, we're already starting, we already have our first date in Austin on April 3rd of next year. And, then it's, 4 races in Texas, and then, race back May 1st in the East Coast, and a swing out for 3 or 4 races in California. And so, we're going to be close to 30 races next year. And again, that's our mission. Some folks would say, I'll give you an example, the Newport race you mentioned, there's only 2 races in Orange County, which is 2, sometimes 3, but mainly 2. And that's a population center of 3.3 million people, and that have 2 races. So, and in terms of affordability, our top price of, Olympic day of or week before is $150. So comparatively, good luck trying to find that race in that area.
So you're a data-driven guy, and you've seen, as a guy who loves the sport like I do, you've seen, people look at COVID and go, okay, this has really been a hardship on triathlon. Well, the reality is the hardship started back like in 2010, 2011. Take me through what your data shows in terms of the sport of triathlon.
Yeah, so there's a really smart guy on our team, Nathan Danielson, who has skills that he'll forget more than I think you and I would remember put together. And so he scraped all the data from the various different sites, et cetera. And in 2010, there were about 500, USAT had 550,000 finishes approximately. Mm-hmm. So that doesn't include DNS, DNF, DQ. By 2019, that had gone down to about 350,000. So that's a 36% decline. If you looked at Ironman, they actually did okay. They went from 57,000 up to around 71,000. They grew 20%. So non-Ironman was, if you exclude that, you're looking at a 43% decline in triathlon in the US over a 10-year period. And let that sink in just a little bit. And then, the New York Times a couple of years ago wrote an article that said, 25% over a 5-year period, but they didn't have the data. We have the data, and the data is that we are in a serious headwind pre-COVID. And it's going to take at least probably 5 years post-COVID to get back to normal.
Well, when I look at the events that we've lost during that period of time, when you talk about Nations Tri, which was one of the biggest tries in the country, and Wildflower, and a lot of events have gone away, especially the shorter distance races. And you and I are both on the same page when it comes to the future of our sport is the shorter distances, because that's something anybody can do in a sprint and Olympic. How do we get people back into the sport of triathlon and doing those short distance races?
And we look at everything with one lens, maybe 2. I remember being at a convention X number of years ago, and I think it was a TBI, and I had a chance to be a one-day keynote on that, or morning keynote, I don't remember. And we talked about the different markets that you have to go into. And I think that when you look at cost, and price. So if at early bird, we could put a family of 4 into a race for 60 for the parents, 60 each, and then 30 for the kids, because anybody at our races that's 22 and under automatically gets 50% off. They just recognize the age and you get 50% off. So a family of 4 can do one of our races for $180. And then again, you put the support behind it so that you're doing clinics ahead of time. So we're seeing an average age of around 32 years old. We're seeing, relatively full races, and we're seeing great demand. I mean, the concept that we could go into Texas and put on 2 events and get registrations for those is really, really a good sign for an organization that doesn't have many resources based in Texas.
Your business model seems to be more New York Roadrunners than anything else, right? If you're a member of New York Roadrunners, you can do New York City Marathon. I mean, really, there's the idea is you have a mass number of participants or members of Cal Tri around the country, and then that gives you power to go get sponsors, and obviously more people want to be involved with something that's successful.
Yeah, I mean, as a regional, it's really hard when you have a race here and a race there. We're hoping by the end of, certainly in 2021 and into 2022, there are companies, whether they're endemic or non-endemic. We've had more success actually in the non-endemic space that will get involved. Now, I will say this: there's great companies like, and you'll have to allow me to do this, Blue 70 and John Duquette. They underwrite all of our swim caps, and that might not sound like much, but when you're expecting 12,000 athletes, that's an amazing sponsorship. Canyon is involved and supports us in a number of different ways. I can, kind of go down the list. We have a new partnership with Spring Energy for nutrition. Rudy Project's been a big supporter. So it's one of those things where there are companies that realize that, we need to rebuild this pipeline. It's not sexy. I mean, you're not going to, have a lot of professional athletes doing our races, but it's generating where the numbers are, the growth.
Yeah. So the other side of this is you've also are creating your own insurance property as part of this, right? So, and not just for yourself, for your own races, but for other race directors as well. Why?
Well, when I got into triathlon, the first thing I thought was go to the sexiest part of the sport, which is insurance. And so that's definitely where I thought we would go. But no, I think a couple things for insurance. We've been using there's probably 10 insurance products out there. And so we took a couple of years to have to create a standard that could get rated by insurance companies so that we could offer our own insurance. So our athletes pay $2.50 for insurance. In fact, we pay $2.50 in some cases if we embed it or we add it on at $2.50, which is a lot less than what the market standard is. We got to a point where a bunch of other companies have reached out, race directors have reached out and said, hey, we're interested in that too for a number of reasons. And so a few weeks ago, we announced that that group is expanding, and the phone hasn't stopped ringing since we put that product. So if I was going to sell that to a potential race director, I would say, look, you can get a product which meets or exceeds all the requirements in 50 states. We've been using it for years. It costs $2.50. You can either bury that in the cost of the entry, you can pass it along as an extra, or you can decide that you can make a small margin off of that because there isn't a lot of margin to be made. And you can do all that and keep your customer data safe and intact. You don't have to share it with any third parties.
So the majority of events in this country are obviously under the umbrella USA Triathlon, so that people can qualify to go to nationals and potentially worlds, and they pay their either a membership fee or they pay a daily 1-day license. But as you realize that data, if you become either a member of USAT or if you do a 1-day event and buy a 1-day license, that data that you promoted the event and put on the event, that data goes to USA Tri.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something where when you start going back and looking at the data back to 2010, and you say, here's a 10-year runway of how is the sport doing and why is it a certain way. I can tell you that we have obviously our event in Newport, which is very successful. We ran it in 2019. It was 900 athletes. We sold out. We've raced in LA County, Riverside County, and the concept that the national governing body would upcharge for an insurance product that's $250, and they would charge our consumers $15, so a 600% markup, and then use that data to then promote their own events to do a vertical. And I think that's a mistake. We've always made recommendations over to. We look at USAT as one of the insurance companies out there, one of the 10. We've encouraged them to do things like, hey, short course shouldn't pay as much as long course. The risk isn't as much. Relay shouldn't get tripled for the same amount of risk. There's a whole bunch of things, but certainly I think when the data when there's a hole in your data bucket, and then you start doing a vertical integration and put on your own events and races, I think that takes it to a whole new level. And I think most race directors who are business conscious and have a bit of a marketing background would not accept that lying down.
So I remember, you were trying to get new people into our sport, which is something I totally appreciate. And you were putting on relays and basically saying it's going to cost you $75 to do a relay, $25 a piece.
Yeah.
But with the addition of $15 from insurance for each person, somebody's doing a 500-yard swim and they're paying $15, the same $15 that somebody pays to do an Ironman. It didn't make sense, correct?
Let me give you the unusual example, but here's a great example. Parents and a kid sign up for our sprint relay. That's typically $60, but let's just say that they put the kid in as the captain. So now it's $30. So the insurance bill, so we're doing it $30, obviously at a loss, but the insurance bill on that would be $15 for each mom and dad, and then $10 for the kid. So that's $40 on insurance on a $30 product. It just doesn't make sense, and I don't think anybody can justify it.
So it's great when you look back and you go, okay, even though the sport of triathlon is down, Ironman is up, so there's still new people coming into the sport. My concern is if you're a coach, you're not making a lot of money coaching people to do a sprint or Olympic distance race. People want to do a 70.3 or a full. So, and if you're training people for 75 or 70.3 Ironman, you're probably telling them, listen, your weekends are for your brick events, brick workouts. We don't want you racing. So then, the short distance races, I've been very concerned for years, are going away because people are so iron centric. For you, is that a concern as well?
Overall, it's a concern. Yeah, I mean, there's some great regional companies. I mean, if you look up at in San Francisco, Ryan Coelho does a great job. If you look at San Diego, Carrie Panic does a great job with Cause Events. There are great regional companies, but I have seen a lot of folks, as you have, leave the sport. I think when Nathan looked at the data and we were looking at participation by state, there were 19 states without one race greater than 500 participants. So that's troubling. But the answer is, it's the book Who Moved My Cheese, and you have to go find the new cheese. And there are no shortage of athletes out there, a new generation of athletes coming into the sport, and you have to just take care of them, treat them a little bit different, and try to make it not so inaccessible. So to give you that example, bicycle, the guidelines for bicycles is pretty, you and I have had this conversation, is really long. And so when we have to try to explain that to somebody, it's, hey, anything with two wheels and brakes in the front and back that isn't a fixie or recumbent, and you're probably in good shape. That is not the that is not the traditional manual on bicycles. And as an engineer, I can't even understand it. So if I can't understand it, there's no way in the world that anybody's going to take the interest or be able to understand it.
In this day and age, we've both seen race directors like a Steve Tomboni, right? He had, I think, 27 triathlons at one point, and now he's putting on primarily trail races. And just found it easier and less of a hassle. My concern, obviously, is we want triathlon to be successful. What's the feel you get from, you're getting a lot of newbies. I'm guessing that a big percentage of people coming to your events are brand new to our sport. And I'm guessing they love our sport. It's a very special sport and maybe something we've lost sight of.
70% are, and probably broken in half, but 70% are first timers or novice. And they, I remember when we first started out at Santa Fe Dam, our first race, and we'd have, some folks were really experienced and folks that were beginner, and there were folks that were experienced that did not want to be on the same course of beginners. What they didn't realize was if you don't keep bringing in beginners, you're going to start losing races. So, we mentioned Orange County as an example, having 2, sometimes 3 races. You go up to Ventura County, and I'm not sure there's any left. And so you just start looking at these triathlon deserts. What Steve described to me and what I've experienced the same in trail runs is you can go to a park and maybe the park fee is $25 for a park fee. And then the participants pay $5 to $10 for parking. And that's the model. You really have to start working with venues. Like it really starts with the venues. So in Southern California, they're not making any new land. So why is a municipality, is it for healthy, safe, healthy, active lifestyle? Is it heads and beds to bring in tourists? Is it because the community wants it because the more activities, the higher the value of the property values? You really have to, that's the very first question when putting a race on. We've been approached by, whether it's existing race companies or municipalities who are looking at their 2021, 22 calendar. And you have to ask that question, is this an opportunity for you to fill a budget hole? Or is this an opportunity for you to make something great for that community? And that's really the big question.
So as somebody who is, you make a living in a lot of different ways. And when you look at this sport and you put on a trail race, you blow a whistle and you go to the finish line, you wait for the people to come and you give them their bags, they go home. When you're doing a triathlon and you've got people in the water, which is scary, you've got people riding bikes at 30 miles an hour, which is scary, and then they get into the run. Why? I mean, why did you decide, besides being a rugby guy who likes to run into things, why would you decide that I think that the sport of triathlon deserves its attention and I think it can thrive if it's done the right way?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's no common sense behind it. Like you can talk strategy how you want to. I think the benefits of what we do is, you mentioned a $5 million in checks being written out. We can build a community. That's what we're doing. You can build a community. You create a lot of goodwill, and then you can direct that community to do some really remarkable things. And so, I like whether it's swim safety or whether it's Couch to 5K and just general health and wellness, fitness, bike safety, things like that. There's that benefit. But for me, when the athletes at Newport raised $250,000 for Special Olympics and Crohn's and colitis at our last race, that was the cherry on the top. I didn't raise that money. Those athletes raised that money. And just recently, last week, I got a note from a participant of that race who developed Crohn's, a serious case of Crohn's, three surgeries later. And they had no idea at the time, but boy, aren't they involved with Crohn's and colitis now for the next race.
Wow. The other things that in terms of creating your own insurance property and basically going head to head with USA Triathlon because they are an insurance provider. What do you see as your goal? How many events would you like to see under that umbrella where they're using your insurance property?
Well, we actually we don't really look at USAT as a competitor. The USAT to us is an insurance provider, and they're one of many. I think the more support this industry can get, the better. In terms of our goal for that product, we believe that by the end of next year, the number of 50 to 70,000 registrations finishes will be part of underneath the California Triathlon Race Director Insurance bucket. So that's not an unreasonable number. There have been race directors who've been in touch with us who have 500 athletes, or 1,000, have 5,000, 7,000, some big numbers. And it's really just another choice. When we were frustrated about the cost that we had to pass on. So just to give an example, Bob, next year we plan to have 20,000 athletes. We would be passing on $300,000 worth of cost to our athletes, and then also losing our data. We didn't want to do that. And until we found the right product a couple of years ago, we had to basically do something we didn't want to do. And then now to be able to offer that product to other race directors is great. And I hope that USAT succeeds, and they're growing the sport, and it's all about getting new people in the sport, no matter which organization. So if our organization grows and we end up having 100,000 registrations coming through us, great. If USAT has 400,000 and other companies have that, won't that be a really good problem to have?
Absolutely. The other thing that I know you've been involved with, and I'm a huge fan of, is these collegiate clubs, right? These guys, whenever you're thinking, oh my God, I don't know if people really are getting into the sport anymore, and you see the enthusiasm, you go out to the Triton Man here in San Diego, and you see all these clubs of kids who are 18, 19, 20 years old loving the sport. And those are the guys who touch you as well, correct?
A couple of years ago, we reached out to UCLA and Iron Bruin, and Kelly Cosmo, if you remember Kelly or know Kelly, former national champion, she's their coach. And so for the last few years, we've been putting on their race. One time when it was really, really cold, too early in the spring, because that's their season. So we kind of had a model where if you look at the old college try with putting a triathlon on, I don't know that that's a great model. When you start dealing with people's safety, health, that kind of thing, I really actually think it needs some professionalism. Mm-hmm. And so we had a chance to help work with UCLA as an example and put that together. And then those athletes got a chance to race. Normally they'd be volunteering, scrambling. They got a chance to race, and they got a chance to use it as a fundraiser. So it was like safe race. Kids got to play. They used it as a fundraiser, win, win, win. And so, for instance, our first race in Fort Worth, there's 22 kids from TCU. I think all of them minus one are first timers. Wow. And they are out there. And so, a week or two ago, we're on a Zoom call with all these, disparate athletes. They're asking the same questions you'd imagine. And it's just great to see a new generation of college kids. That's why our discount for youth, we stretched it a little bit to 22 and below, because we want to include, the middle schoolers, the high schoolers, and the college kids. We want to make sure that they have a fair chance to compete.
Yeah, I mean, expense is a big part of keeping people from our sport. It's important not to price those guys out. So again, 2021 Cal Tri, Lake Perris Tri, the first annual on the 9th of May, and people can still sign up, Tommy?
They can. There's, I think there's about 10 to 14 days based on the run rate, 10 to 14 days left of registration. And just to say, Fort Worth is April 18th. Austin's April 25th. Lake Monticello, beautiful Lake Monticello, inside a gated community outside of Charlottesville, Virginia. That's been sold out basically since February. And then we ended all with my feet up at Lake Perris with that new route around that ring route. And I look forward. I think if I remember correctly, you were the very first registrant, and to kind of put some focus on that, the folks that are going to be there. I think Carrie and Tobias Panic from Cause Events, those race directors are going to be racing. Carolyn Wolk from Tri Events, who's been around with Bill Fulton for 40 years, will not be racing, but will be there. Rick Crump from Redondo Beach, he'll be racing. Michael Epstein, famous from Nautica Malibu and Hermosa, he'll be there. And then folks like Michaeli Jones is bringing her Giddy Up team. TCSD will be there. Wadi Inc. will be there. Zoot will be there. And most importantly, you'll be there with the sombreros, I think.
Exactly. Bringing sombreros, birthday celebration. We love it. We call it, usually it's Cinco de Bob, but we'll call this Nueve de Bob. That'll be fun. Tommy, hey, thanks so much for taking time. Congrats on everything you're doing. You're going to need a little sleep over this next month or so.
Yeah, not too much. Honestly, the fitness level has decreased. So I'm glad I'm going to watch you race, and I get to be the race director. Thanks so much for having us today, Bob.
Thom Richmond has been our guest again. Breakfast with Bob, not quite Kona edition. Thanks everybody for tuning in. We'll catch you next time. See ya.